My name is Samantha Saltess, and I am an MAT student at National Louis University. The research question I am going to explore today is how can we effectively manage classroom behavior in the middle school environment? According to EduTopia, it can take years for new teachers to get their feet under them as far as classroom management is concerned, but there are tried and true methods of classroom management that have been shown to be effective. According to the Association of Middle Level Education, classroom management is critically important in the middle level grades when students are more likely to experience declines in motivation and self-esteem, where a positive relationship with the teacher can make all the difference. But have you ever been asked why on earth you would want to teach middle school students? It's an age that's confusing and significant, full of conflict, emotions, bullying, and friendships, and there is no such thing as a typical middle schooler. It's often looked at as an age where kids can talk back, are rude and difficult, and uncooperative. However, with proper knowledge on the young adolescent brain, as well as being armed with the proper classroom management tips, teaching middle school is a rewarding, fun, and enjoyable experience. According to a classroom management presentation by Questar.org, there are 3 main guiding principles that you will want to keep in mind as you think about how you will effectively manage your classroom: good teaching, active engagement, and positive interactions. Good teaching is about being properly prepared, understanding your students, and differentiating so they are all working and learning. Active engagement is about making sure all of the students are actively involved in the learning process by relating the content to their lives, making it fun and interesting, and providing hands-on learning opportunities. The more downtime, the more trouble you may see. Positive interactions is about building a good rapport with your class, building positive relationships, and creating a safe learning environment where students feel comfortable asking questions and making mistakes which they can learn from. Before we look at specific classroom management tips, it's important to look at what a middle school student is thinking and feeling. There are many changes going on in a young adolescent's life, brain, and body. The main developments in a middle school student are physical, intellectual, emotional, and social changes. Always keep these in mind when teaching middle level students. Physical changes include puberty and sexual maturity, all which can happen at different times and sporadically between the ages of 10 and 14. Early bloomers may be boastful, but are often embarrassed. Late bloomers are almost always self-conscious, according to Sarah Powell. Intellectual development includes a state between childlike thinking and adult thinking, or concrete and abstract thinking. Students begin to think in more general terms and can visualize events without having to see them. They can make mental connections, put ideas into perspective, and predict outcomes in more complex ways. Their attention spans may shorten, and they may have vivid, sometimes distracting imaginations. Emotional development includes the variety of emotions that occur in young adolescent brains. They may be moody, anxious, and embarrassed by things we don't see as important. Emotional development is interrelated with both physical and intellectual development, which can cause emotions to go haywire. Because of emotional variability, middle schoolers are at a higher risk of making poor decisions in life and in the classroom. Social development includes the need for socialization and acceptance. According to Powell, young adolescents are caught between their desire to be safe and secure and their desire for freedom and independence. Friends take on a greater significance in their lives, and peer pressure becomes a positive and negative influence. One way to ensure that your students are learning is to create a positive and productive learning environment. Having a positive classroom will ensure that you can focus on the guiding principles of good teaching, active engagement, and building relationships. You can do this by showing students you care builds rapport with students, and in turn creates a better learning environment. But how do you build up this rapport to a place that benefits the students? You can share personal stories of your triumphs and errors. It makes you more human and relatable. Get to know their hobbies and interests. Arrive early and stay late to chat with students or to just be there if they need you. Use humor and jokes now and then to be relatable. Be humble and acknowledge the mistakes you make and show that we all make mistakes and we can learn from them. And relate the course material to their everyday lives and communities. Creating a positive classroom environment and building relationships doesn't mean you have to try to be the cool teacher who befriends their students. Ryan McCarty for theteachingchannel.org talks about how he tried to act like the cool teacher when he first started teaching, which led to more problems than positives. He advises new teachers to follow a behavior management cycle where they give explicit directions, notice students following them, and then take corrective action from a hierarchy of consequences. Teachers should develop what Lee Carter calls a no-nonsense nurturer persona. They should be no nonsense in front of the class, and a nurturer one-on-one. Students realize you hold them accountable for their work, yet they can come to you when they are having a bad day. When you do discipline a student, make sure you greet them the next day in a positive manner. We've learned that building relationships is the basis of teaching and learning, but what are the specific ways both new and veteran teachers can create meaningful relationships? According to the National Education Association and Sarah Powell, there are a few things we can do to get to know our students. We can send an email to each student before class starts and make sure to greet them at the door on the first day and every day. Powell insists that we learn our students' names by the end of the second week, no matter how many students we teach. We can use surveys to better understand our students, as well as family surveys to get to know their home life and their families. Another tip for establishing good relationships is to protect their self-esteem by disciplining quietly rather than in front of the whole class. And don't forget to build goodwill on good days. That is, give them praise when praise is due. Yes, these tips are all great in theory, but all teachers know sometimes there are difficult students that seem to refuse our best efforts at managing the classroom. What can we do to reach these behavior students? The Association of Middle-Level Education discusses how we can go beyond building relationships to reach some of the more difficult students. Research shows that our actions actually have twice as much impact on the classroom as testing policies or community involvement. For difficult students, it may be even more important to reach them on a personal level. The most important aspect of positive relationships is empathy. This results in the students feeling more than just heard, but understood. Many teachers think they are practicing empathy when they show they care, but empathy is more seeing with the eyes of another and putting yourself in their shoes. Before you respond, listen to their side and seek to understand where the misbehavior or struggles are coming from. Communicate that empathy in your response. Another tip is to admire negative behavior. This seems counterintuitive, but you should acknowledge the negative behavior, as they have obviously learned to employ for some time now and have seen that it works, and try to redirect it somewhere else. Be sincere about it, as any hint of sarcasm will ruin your efforts. The last tip in managing difficult students is to remember to leave your ego at the door. Young adolescents are highly skilled at reading teachers and understanding what makes them agitated. Respond strategically rather than emotionally to their behavior. It is human nature to get upset when a student practices disruptive or insulting behavior. Take a look at your own vulnerabilities, such as the need for power in the classroom, and use it to respond in a strategic way that moves the conversation into something positive. We've heard many tips and tricks on how to effectively manage your classroom, but new teachers might not be well versed in the ins and outs of the daily classrooms and happenings, while veteran teachers might not be aware of some of the actions they take on a daily basis. It's important to be aware of some of the things we may be doing on a daily basis that actually hurt our ability to positively manage the classroom. The first is smiling at the wrong times, which seems crazy, but smiling when a student does something disruptive but funny can actually encourage this behavior. Make a conscious effort to hold a neutral, on-task expression when you want them to work or listen. There is a time and a place for humor. Addressing problems publicly in front of the class can embarrass these fragile students. Handle them privately whenever possible, whether that is placing a note on their desk after class or writing their name on the board asking them to talk after class. Teachers don't often wait for every student in class to stop talking before they give directions. This causes one to turn to their neighbor to ask, or students following directions incorrectly. Teachers should strive to wait those extra seconds or even a minute until everyone is quiet. When you pass out papers and give directions as you do it, you are asking your students to do two things at once, and they can't process your directions. Do the talking first and then pass out the papers. Another thing some teachers do is always talking in don'ts. If you tell a kid not to touch a painted wall, they want to touch the painted wall. Always tell them what they should be doing instead. Another important reminder is that staying up front while you teach allows for pockets of misbehavior. Move around while you teach and do it casually and often. Lastly, many teachers make the mistake of treating all students the same way when building relationships and addressing misbehavior. All students are different, and it's important to employ the idea of practicing empathy, but use different strategies for different students. So what are the main takeaways after all this research? Well, establishing goodwill and positive relationships is absolutely the heart of teaching and classroom management. There are many ways to do this, from sending home get-to-know-you surveys, asking questions, and just being available before and after class. Remember all that is going on in the middle school brain, and how easily their self-esteem can be hurt. Whenever possible, employ discipline strategies in private rather than in front of the class. We also must remember to model rather than just preach good behavior, so students can sense what we expect. It's important to organize lessons optimally to avoid boredom and wasted time. Engage the students with groups, partners, journaling, and anything else that encourages hands-on learning. Lastly, remember there is no surefire or quick-fix strategy for classroom management that works in all classrooms. Learn about your students and read the room in order to figure out what strategies you can employ to ensure a positive, secure classroom environment for all. Thank you for watching and listening, and I hope you can take away some lessons and tips for managing your own classroom.